Baldur's Gate 3 is a must-own, must-experience RPG of perhaps our lifetime. And hopefully that's not a true statement. Hopefully we'll get to see this team continue to follow up this caliber of a game with even more sequels or perhaps even original stories. All whether we want to build them in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, but I think Larian in and of itself as a studio has really showcased a rock star level of development chops when it comes to this game, and it really shows that passion is the fourth ingredient when it comes to making video games. If you take a simple project management mindset, time, money, and resources, you can apply that to any game. And I think this game, the problem with Baldur's Gate 3 is really it highlights the problem with the video game industry. And this isn't to say that everybody is wrong or anybody's to blame, but this is just the nature of what we're looking at. And as we get ready to release, as this game gets ready to release itself into the world and into the wild, I think players are very excited, and I think that excited should be rewarded. But it's interesting because right now we're seeing developers start to kind of push back on that, saying that to expect this level for RPGs going forward is going to let you down. And so I thought I'd explore that with you in today's video. So hello everyone and welcome to the channel. My name is Brian. If you're new around here, I'm a stand-up comedian, software developer, father of 6, and that is, I guess, the high-level resume. You can choose to use that, you can choose to discard it, I don't care, but welcome in anyway. And so for returning subscribers, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming back, and that's what you get for subscribing. You get additional gratitude and thanks for coming in and checking out these videos. Now, I talk a lot about RPGs, I talk a lot about MMORPGs, I talk a lot about gaming, and that's what we're going to do here today. But this isn't just a story about me as a software developer, because this is a story about what other software developers are talking about when it comes to the size and the scope. And it's really interesting. And I want to highlight a lot of gamers' perspective, because software dev, game dev, and being a gamer overall, it is such this monolith of a system that I think when we sit down to kind of try and, pinpoint certain things, everything, the scope and everything that it goes to make a game becomes so incomparable to understand. It is almost, I feel like the best way to describe it is video games are a miracle of our time, just the fact that they exist. And when a game like Baldur's Gate 3 comes out and really delivers on everything, I've had this game since early access when it first launched 3 years ago, and here we are about ready to have this full game released. So I'm very, very thrilled for more and more people to actually step into this completed experience and experience a truly, it boggles my mind the amount of options and how the game in and of itself even runs. That's the truth of the situation. But I'm gonna start with really kind of what kicked off all of this. Xavier Nelson Jr. tweets out, like a lot of people, I'm deeply excited about the lovely folks that of Larian have accomplished with Baldur's Gate 3. And I want to generally preemptively push back against players taking that excitement and using it to apply criticism or a raised standard to the RPGs going forward. Now, only Josh forgives. This is, again, developers from across the industry. So this is just really, truly interesting. He says, great thread. The conditions under which Baldur's Gate 3 was made are atypical. This is no way a slight against the team and the people working on it, those who are clearly passionate and talented. Having a foundation set and the funding to build these things on your own terms is invaluable. And the key word here is definitely going to be your own terms, because that is, I think, one of the problems with the industry when all things are said and done. Now, Rebecca tweets this out, the whole thread, I can't be appalled by how much big games cost to make and how those lavish productions, the standards by which all games are judged. Let's hope Baldur's Gate 3 is a generous once-in-a-lifetime RPG. I hope no one expects a 10, 20, or 40-person team to make one of these. This is true. That's where I think the 10, 20, and 40-person teams, though, are critical to the industry as a whole. But we'd be remiss if we aren't honest with the fact that the industry has changed. And as much as we try to kind of fit it into that 90s and early 2000s box, I don't think we're going to be going back anytime soon. But here's a really interesting take. I'm going to bring up Dan Gray here. He says, it's perplexing to see a game developer telling consumers not to raise their expectations. Baldur's Gate 3 is what happens when a game studio executes on a vision that they are passionate about without the need to compromise. That's it. That has been true from DOS 1 to today. they've earned it. So here's where things, I just kind of want to now take all of that I've presented to you and really kind of break it down into a couple of different categories. My personal view, especially when it comes to gaming and game development, is expectations tend to run you the wrong way. They tend to hurt, and because you can imagine so much more than it would take a team to build. Now, the other side of it is that, like as devs pointed out, the reality of what it takes to run the industry and the business side of things, this is kind of an art versus business, that is a battle as old as art and business in and of itself. The realities of those challenges make it really rare that these things happen. And that's why I think the challenge that I would issue to you in this video is that if you like RPGs, single player RPGs, multiplayer RPGs, if you like video games, when a studio comes out, even it might not be a game that you're like, oh, I'm absolutely going to have to be there day one, we vote with our wallets. We vote with our dollars. Elden Ring was such a great story outside of the game itself, was because it allows people to put money into those buckets and in a way wake up these sleeping giants of game companies who are prone to reduce risk as a part of the investment infrastructure. This is one of the things that gets lost in the conversation. Their job in terms of especially a public traded company is to help improve the value of the share. We could debate all the ins and outs of that in the comments if you wish, or in Discord if you wish. I'm happy to have those discussions, but I don't want that to narrate or take us away from the topic of this script. But note that there's all these incentives and these influences and these pressures that as a gamer who I'm consuming the game doesn't necessarily feel. But Dan is right. Baldur's Gate 3 is what happens when a game studio executes on the vision that they're passionate about. And those things are key: vision and passion. And then, just like Only Josh Forgives says, it's having the funding, and the funding willing to put in the effort and let the game come to fruition. And this also is a new testament to the strength of that early access campaign. Now, here's the kicker though. Here's where I'm going to kind of push back on the gaming mindset. Baldur's Gate 3 has got the number 3 behind it. Would this be as successful? Would this be as funded? Would this be as important if it was a brand new unnamed franchise? It could still be Baldur's Gate 3, but you put any other name in front of that and that people don't have that SEO or that market share, and I don't think you can get that kind of buy-in. So let's be realistic when it comes to the fact that this is still technically a sequel, and a sequel that is beloved, and we should not discount because it is important to do so. So I want to kind of highlight those ideas here for you guys on that perspective. However, I think when it comes down to it, demand and having that vocal, like that vocality, the ability to express this in a positive and build up way, not to attack the devs, not to attack studios, not to sit here and using your time and energy just to be angry about stuff that you cannot control, is the important lesson that we can all take away here. The way that these devs can have the funding and have the ability to set the vision and bring in the people who want to actually make the game is it really derives from when companies say, yes, like this is something that's going to be supported. We can actually look at the gamers who not just say what they want, but then follow it up with the dollars. Because what we end up seeing, especially what I see a lot of, is that a lot of people will say they want certain things. They'll say it vocally. You'll feel like everybody wants certain things, but then the thing happens and no one actually shows up for it. And then you end up having whole companies and people losing their jobs and things like that. And so there's so much to consider in terms of running teams this size when it comes to HR, when it comes to keeping that ship moving. Bigger teams, bigger budgets doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a 1-to-1 velocity ratio. And for those who don't know, velocity is the term of adding devs, increasing your ability to get more points moved across the board. Getting more tasks done is your velocity. But the bigger the teams, the more management, more overhead, it does require that everybody is working, and they're probably working really hard. What's going to be really interesting to see as kind of a final thought before I send you guys on your way is I'm sure we're going to see some articles talking about crunch. I'm sure we're going to talk about, there's going to be some stories about how hard it is. But Baldur's Gate 3 is an incredible, it's an incredible achievement. And because of that achievement and because of what they've done, I don't think those stories are going to even get a lot of traction because the game's good. If the game wasn't good, you would see that kind of narrative being pushed. So there's going to be always a narrative, always an incentive, always these, kind of things happening. And at the end of the day, yes, I think no matter what, Baldur's Gate 3 will raise the expectations for gamers. And people are going to look at and point to this for gamers. And I think humans are built for that challenge, to sit here and say, well, how can we also learn from this experience to make gaming better overall? I'm an optimist. That's a part of my, I guess, charm or a flaw, depending on where you sit on the fence. However, I have to say that, yes, I don't expect a 10, 20, 40 person team to make a Baldur's Gate style RPG from the indie perspective, but they don't need to. I think this comes down into pricing and consumption and what you're looking for. And no better example of this is than Sea of Stars, another game I've been playing as a part of the demo and I'm very excited for. I don't expect Sea of Stars to be Baldur's Gate 3 and vice versa. So I do say I can categorize different games in different ways, but it boggles my mind for everything that they've done with Baldur's Gate 3 that they're listing it at that $70 price point, or I think maybe I bought it at 60. I can't remember now. So it is going to be what it is in this case. Guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you picking up Baldur's Gate 3? Have you already been playing it? Are you looking forward to it? Or is this something that you haven't heard of and now you're maybe genuinely curious? Sound off, let me know. I love reading y'all's comments, and I try to get to as many as I can, as well as highlight them in other videos. But guys, thanks so much for your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.